Hey, everybody.
Howdy.
We'll go ahead and let people kind of work their way in, and then we can have a nice little space. How's everybody doing today?
No complaints here. How are you feeling? You sound a little bit different. Sick?
Yeah, I've had a cold for the last 2 weeks, and I'm almost through the whole thing. It's funny. I did a COVID test, an RSV test, an influenza test, strep throat test, checked for pneumonia, and it turns out it's just a common rhinovirus. That's what I got.
Yeah, I heard it's from JJ, I think it was, that it seems that it's going around the office. So hopefully you guys get better soon. It's never fun to be sick.
This one was really unusual because it just lingered and lingered, and it's mostly over, but it's still got some sinus issues and still a little bit of coughing here and there. But the fever's gone, and I feel about, yeah, I'd say 75%. And it was just weird because I felt 90% about 5 days ago. And I said, oh, it's over. And then I rebounded and it got worse. And so, yeah, this rhinovirus thing, man, it's spreading like wildfire. 25 people got sick that I know of from the summit.
Wow. I guess some of us that were there and didn't get sick should be consider ourselves lucky then.
Well, I guess that suit offers a great degree of protection.
It seems like it might be better than the masks were during COVID. So add it
You heard,
to the benefit list.
you heard it here, folks. Mandatory Hosky suit wearing. We have to do this for everybody's protection, and it ensures social distancing.
Can we try to convince the Cardano Foundation that for 2024 summit you have to wear a Hosky outfit so like everybody in the crowd is literally just Hosky?
Yeah, I'm gonna be real honest with you. That's how you get a furry convention. It's just like you've gotten about 90% there, and we're just gonna flip the switch. It's Anthrocon.
You heard it here first, folks. 2024. All right, let's let people get up here. I believe it was James first, then Stoners Club.
Hey, Charles. Hope you feel better, my friend. I'm over here in the UK, tuning into a lot of your Twitter Spaces, and yeah, I want to say thanks really for keeping it going. And it's been a funny time, hasn't it, the last year? But you've maintained this level of like people are more and more people are sort of talking about Cardano, and yeah, just really wanted to hear your thoughts, sort of for the next sort of next year and where you see it going. Not really just on the price, but on Haskell and everything else.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of challenges that are before us, but actually these are great opportunities for us to lead the industry. So there's obviously the big transition with Voltaire, and an enormous amount of progress has been made, and I know we're actually headed in the right direction because nobody's completely happy. If everybody was happy, then that would be a disaster. It's good to see that there's a bit of conversation and disgruntlement floating around in various things. But it's fun because we get to talk about self-amending systems. So we get to go back to the Peter Suber days and talk about the principles of nomic and all the things they've learned and the paradoxes that can form. We get to talk about writing a machine understandable constitution and what limits exist there. So there's some great formal mathematics and just great uh, foundations one can think about what are the limits of a protocol's ability to understand its own design and its own rule set and avoid self-amendment from blowing it up. And then there's a lot of incentives engineering that is being figured out real time. Like, do you compensate DREPs? How do you do that in a reasonable way? How many of them should there be? How does a market regulate these types of things? I am not aware of any governance system at scale that really fully embraced liquid feedback. We're kind of doing a hybrid system, a liquid feedback with institutional support, constitutional support, and some form of representative democracy. So these things look pretty interesting to me and pretty fun. And so that's one big pillar is the governance experimentation and how much progress is being made with that experimentation. And really, next year is the year that it's going to reach its nadir and come alive.
And
Then, on the protocol side, there's an enormous amount of just cleanup that's happening, like Ouroboros Genesis and UTXO HD and a lot of long overdue things that just really need to get through. And what's nice is that team can roll over and also do Paris at the same time and get that into the protocol, along with VRF improvements and Plutus improvements. So, Plutus V3 is going to be a lot of fun to see roll out. And that's going to bring BLS support alongside more than a dozen crypto primitives into the protocol, which a lot of builders can use. The dawn of Mithril is really cool too. Mithril is just everything we thought it was going to be and more. But now we need to get into the node. And so there's going to be a big conversation about that. And at the same time, a bigger conversation about what does it mean to be a stake pool operator in a world of partner chains. Partner chains, rolling that out is going to be a Leviathan effort. And one of my primary focuses next year, and make sure that that gets where it needs to go, because we can build out a dense service layer. And, we haven't forgotten anything about prior research. Ouroboros, Laos, and input endorsers, there's still a dedicated team on that. They're working hard, and papers are upcoming, and we've learned enough to get to a point where I think there's going to be a deep and rich prototyping phase. And actually, I think that's a perfect opportunity for old friends to make a new entrance. In particular, I'd love to see Well-Typed and Duncan take on that part of the equation, because they were the ones who did the original work with Ouroboros. And it would be fun to see Well-Type, in addition to doing the UTXO HD, do a lot of the prototype and simulation work with PNSOL on input endorsers in preparation for the next major iteration of the protocol. So firing on all cylinders when you look at the actual progress of things, and the adoption looks great. TVL keeps going up. There's some phenomenal new projects like AXO, for example, and some of the older projects are upgrading Plutus V2 or finally gotten where they need to go. And these second generation Cardano dApps are looking really fun. And just a lot of opinion and diversity in the space. So it's not saying that there's no problems. In fact, there's tons of things for us to work on as an ecosystem. But what's nice is there's now 850 members at Intersect, and the community is starting to take ownership of the backlog and slowly but surely come in and write those problems down and make sure they become first-class citizens in the protocol evolution.
That's amazing. Thanks, Charles. It's so good to hear all of that. I mean, the last question I'd like to ask is, I saw your tweet to Sam Altman. I'd love to hear what you think about that. And I'm really trying to understand how a world is going to look where competition's taken away. Because if in 2 or 3 years you can ask an AI system to pretty much create anything, write any code, be it Web3 or any type of code you want, it's going to completely level the playing field. And it's really going to come down to like a sales and marketing game if anybody can create any technology. So I'd just love to hear your thoughts on, what you think about Sam Altman. I don't think he took a share in OpenAI, and how you think that's going to impact Cardano.
So it's important to understand that the governance structure of OpenAI was always a little screwy. And so they started as a not-for-profit, and they had about $1 billion in funding. And at some point they said, hey, we actually need a for-profit entity. So they set up a for-profit entity under the not-for-profit, and they began selling shares in that entity. And I believe that entity was something like OpenAI Global LLC. And it's kind of hard to understand how much money that got exactly. I know Andreessen Horowitz, Sequoia, K2 Global, and Microsoft were all investors at various valuations, from up to 30 to 80 billion. And they've raised certainly a lot of capital. Now, but my understanding is that Sam Altman actually didn't have any equity in the for-profit subsidiary that's majority controlled by the OpenAI not-for-profit that sits on the top. And what happened, what I've been able to piece together from talking to people and looking around the space and leaked employee transcripts, was that some time ago, about a month ago, it looked like there was a kind of a fight between Ilya and Sam Altman, where Ilya is the chief scientist and kind of the brains behind ChatGPT. And apparently Sam was trying to diminish some of his influence and role in the company. Ilya responded by lobbying the board at the not-for-profit to basically purge Sam and his followers. So they kind of talked about this in silent, and then they initiated the coup yesterday, where they literally just texted him and said, hey, show up for Google Hangout. He shows up, he's fired. Very shortly thereafter, Greg, the co-founder and president of the company, resigned. And then several key employees have now resigned. I think they're up to 5 already. What's really interesting is that the investors in the LLC, the for-profit LLC, including Microsoft, were not informed of this board fight until after it happened. So like Sasha Nadella basically got a message as Sam was being fired. Oh, hey, by the way, we know you just put $10 billion in our company, but yeah, we're letting the CEO go. And it's like, what? Excuse me? Yeah, that's not good form. So this is going to get messy pretty quickly. Shareholders have rights, and there's a concept of fair notice to significant shareholders whenever you make major governance changes to an organization. It's kind of a little weird because the not-for-profit actually has a different fiduciary set of responsibilities than the for-profit does. And one could argue that they actually sometimes can contradict each other. And because the not-for-profit is the majority owner of the for-profit, it's going to be really interesting how that pans out. But it's going to get messy. And it's just a great example of good governance is the hardest thing to achieve in practice. I mean, we're talking about Sequoia and Microsoft, and we're talking about the Silicon Valley people that done this forever and launched thousands of companies. So obviously they should be rock stars at structuring things in the right way to avoid these things from happening in a very public fashion with an $80 billion company that is the leader of artificial intelligence right now. But instead they have a midnight, board coup, and they just basically push out this guy, Steve Jobs style. It's an extraordinary thing. And if they're getting it wrong at that level, it tells you that, it's something that's a very difficult topic. And you have to think whenever you start a program or a project or company really carefully about your shareholder rights, your founders' agreements, and ultimately how you get rid of people and how you do that in the least disruptive way possible when they're no longer aligned with the mission of the organization.
Thanks very much, Charles. I could ask you questions all day, but there's lots of other speakers. So keep up the incredible work, and thanks for your response. Appreciate it.
Donors Club, you're up.
Uncle Charlie, I know your family's like in the medical field. I know you're a little under the weather, so I just want to recommend a weed tea. I've had COVID like 4 or 5 times, and the weed tea with a little bit of honey has always knocked it out. I don't know how good it does medically, but at least I get so high, I forget I'm sick. So that's one thing I want to suggest for you. Second,
I've been trying the CBD, and that works really well.
that's beautiful. If you add some THC to that, it'll double down on it. Uh,
I still got shit to do, man. I got work to do.
take a break sometime. But
I take a break. The whole internet hates me, man.
they're gonna hate you regardless. Look at that thing where you got mentioned 69 times. I know you're into mathematics. I don't know if that was on purpose or what, or that's just a sign of how cool you are, but that was the greatest thing I seen. I was like, 69 times exactly? The only thing better would have been if you were mentioned 420 times.
42069. That's the Ethereum story. I think we have a title for the book.
Yo, but I just want to come check in with you. Hope you feel better. Keep working. And the glow in the dark weed, my DMs are open. When that's ready, I want to be one of the first to test it, and I'll give you an honest review.
Yeah, we gotta figure that one out. It doesn't actually seem like it would be too complicated to do, but the thing that we have to figure out is actually to develop the biocircuitry inside the plant that would allow us to actually change the spectrum of the luciferase expression based on the density of THC that's present. So ideally, you'd want it that if it has more THC in the plant, that it would glow a different color, like red. Then if it has less THC, it glows more like green, and you have this gradual changing of spectrum from it. And if you could do that, it would really help the grow facilities be able to differentiate their plants visually just by, what's more powerful versus less powerful, what's more potent. So that'd be a lot of fun to do, but it's not the primary focus of what we're doing down in Dallas. And obviously, once we get past our first generation stuff, that's an example of a licensable second generation thing that can be done through an affiliated company or a partnership or something like that. I was thinking to do with Snoop, but I just saw that tweet that he's getting off the weed, and I was like, what the hell is this, like the end times? What's going on, man?
It was written in the Bible, I think. It's like one of them things. When Snoop stops smoking weed, that's when the shit's gonna start. But Anyway, maybe the glow in the dark weed will bring it back, you know?
There you go.
Officer, I swear these are just backup lighting for when the power goes out. Slow Tide, you're next.
He's a little slow.
Slow tide.
And
Take
he
it
rugged.
easy.
He rugged, so Jer Bear, you're next.
Hey Charles, a question for you. Um, with what happened with Orbis and that other protocol last year, I can't remember, it was a lending protocol on ADA. I remember Orbis being or supposed to be like the sort of Starkware of Cardano. Like they were doing some really interesting things in the ZK rollup space. Do you see any teams maybe picking up that technology and making advancements, or just anyone in general, and how they're advancing with ZK rollups in Cardano?
I mean, that's not sure if that static's on my side or your side.
That's coming from Cast. Oh, yeah, there you go.
There we go. Yeah, we're working on it. I mean, that's one of the core tenets of Midnight. We've been working with Pluto Eris and Halo 2, and we've been doing a lot of work in the roll-up recursion space. And obviously, we'd like to bring that to Cardano, A, because we need trustless bridging between the partner chains and the main chain. But then that's a reusable primitive that can be brought in again and again. So we kind of are attacking the problem from three different dimensions. One, you need better mathematical primitives. And in particular, we're looking at Pluto Eris as a much better curve structure for these things. And we've made enormous amounts of progress in trying to bring that into the mainstream, get that into Halo 2. Two, you need certain proof structures that are very lightweight that don't require heavy recursion. So Mithril is a great example of that, where it does one thing really, really well, and it turns out that that's a super useful thing for a variety of applications. And those are very concise certificates and low computational overhead. And then three, obviously attack it from the full bore crypto side, the recursion side. So we're working on it, and we put in millions and millions of dollars. We have partners like Galois and dedicated crypto engineers. We've written papers, and the hope is that not only can we bring that, we'd like to standardize a lot of these things. And there's a great effort by Elaine Shi at CMU to do that and start bringing some of those standards in the Cardano ecosystem. But I think we have one of the best shots of being a dark horse winner in that fight, because when you look at extended UTXO and this concept of deterministic transactions, it is a lot easier to reason about proof structures and proof properties in that stateless system than it is in a system with global state that's non-deterministic. So, if you separate the math from all of it, we by design, I think, have some structures that are much easier to prove properties about when you start living the zero knowledge world. And so I'd much rather do zero knowledge crypto on a UTXO system than an account system. And so I think Cardano has a chance to really shine there and look really sexy there. But yeah, we're definitely full steam ahead, and it's a huge priority. And obviously all that stuff will end up eventually in Cardano one way or the other. But there's a lot of stuff to do. There's new structures that have to be put in Ledger, new transaction types, enhancements to Plutus, like V3 bringing BLS support, certainly helpful because a lot of these proofs can be converted into BLS proofs. But that's just the beginning, and it'll come. What always happens with this technology is people get real excited because they know how powerful it is, and they get lost in the weeds for a long time, and then everything slows down and then people forget about it, and the real builders keep chipping away at it, and then eventually you have your GPT moment and everybody gets super excited. Remember, large language models have been around for almost 10 years, and they only really got sexy and good this year. But no one paid any attention in 2021, even though everybody kept saying again and again LLMs are going to be the shit. So it's very similar when you talk about roll-ups, recursion, and these things. We're starting to get to the phase where people are starting to say, oh, yeah, I guess they exist, but they weren't the big thing. And meanwhile, all this progress is being made, and the field as a whole is moving in the right direction.
Alrighty, so we have Jenny, then Ed. Jenny, you're up.
Hey, thanks, Hosky. Hi, Charles. Thanks for hanging out with us today. I hope you feel better soon. And I'm with Joe. You got to get some rest. Without enough rest, you're not going to heal. So keep that in mind. We love you working, but we want you to be healthy. So I'm actually sitting here on my desk right now holding an Intel Nuke that I cleaned up um, with all the intentions to have it set up running on Sancho this weekend, so I can start experimenting and playing around there. I've been trying to do this for a while, but it's been very, very hectic the past 3 months with all these events and Catalyst and oh my God, so much going on. It just feels like everything's moving so fast lately. It's become harder and harder to stay involved in every aspect of Cardano, right? But governance was like really what what drove me into Cardano. Like my heart um, basically stayed here. That was like the most important part of it. Like listening to you talk about empowering economies, like people that don't have this opportunities really spoke to me. As a Venezuelan, I've seen it firsthand, and listening to you speak, it's like when somebody gets it just by the things they say, right? So I listen to you so closely when you talk about the idea of governance. And one of the things that really resonated with me that I watch out for is you talk about how important it was to create a stable system, right? You talked about the importance of surviving long enough for the growth to take us in the direction that we were heading in the first place. You talked a lot about having the right social dynamics, having the right crowds, in order for us to create stable systems that can converge reliably in decision making, and having the community accept these decisions so we can avoid scapegoating and all this other stuff that takes you into the direction of like a Cardano classic like you've mentioned before or something like that. So I just want to know, how do you feel in terms of how stable we are? Are we there? Do you feel confident that we have the right social dynamics? Do we have the right crowd? I just wanna hear from you personally. How do you feel that we are as we enter into this such an important phase of Cardano?
Yeah, it's a great question, and thank you so much for the kind words and support and the empathy for illness. It's always tough. At some point, you have to just say, no matter what the consequences are, we got to go through this shared experience because we know when we come out the other side, we're going to be a lot stronger. No matter how much preparation you have, if you go and sign up for something really hard, you're going to get your ass kicked. So you can go and train for a real long time, but when you go climb Mount Everest, it's still Mount Everest. It's going to kick your ass. No matter how good of a shape you're in, if you go and sign up for special forces, they're going to kick your ass because that's what they do. And governance is a great example of that. When you open up that floodgate, what happens is you have to bring many different people together who have different opinions, levels of expertise, styles, and ultimately philosophies and values. And in many cases, they're going to be radically divergent with each other. And they're going to fight each other. And in some cases, they get deeply personal. In some cases, they do things that are just incredibly puzzling and counterproductive and destructive. But that bad side should never be the fear of that used to say we should shut people out, because at the end of the day, when you open up those floodgates, you also get all the good side. And that good side is the opinions, values, beliefs, and knowledge of millions of people. And the power that we have at our fingertips, if we do this the right way, is that we'll have the most diverse organism, most diverse group of people in the entire cryptocurrency space with their hands on the pulse of the system, growing the system, incentivized to make the system great. And when we wake up, it'll make us the world standard, because you just don't get that level of access with Ethereum or Bitcoin. I mean, that's why I'm not in the Bitcoin space. It was so ridiculously exclusive. They say bizarre things like we want to innovate, and say, okay, well, Let's talk about log space mining or NEPA POWs, or let's talk about useful proof of work, or let's talk about sharded proof of work. Okay, so I'm not even talking about moving from proof of work to proof of stake. Just make proof of work better so that Bitcoin can be more useful as a payment system or a digital gold. Oh, no, we can't do that. Let's talk about extending the accounting model. I'm not talking about going to accounts, but just, adding smart contracts to UTXO. Oh, no, we can't do that. Let's talk about multi-asset standards so color coins can finally be realized at the base ledger. Oh, no, we can't do that. It's very exclusive. So all those innovations are now in Cardano on the UTXO side and on the color coins, that's Cardano native assets. And obviously we did all the research with proof of work and it's now out there. But the fact that they were exclusive meant that all of that potential value is lost to them. And it's the same with Ethereum and their roadmap and their leadership. And it's the same with a lot of blockchains. And so if we're better by just welcoming people, then what will happen is the roadmap will be much stronger if we have the right governance structures. And I think with 1694 and Intersect, we have the right foundations to start that process. They're going to be really frustrating at times and get personal at times. And they already have. I mean, there's people running things like Cardano leaks and all this other stuff, and they just send out nonsense. And they really are deeply personal. And for some reason, they say, well, by burning the whole ecosystem down, this will make Cardano better. I've already experienced that. I saw it with Ethereum Classic. That was an example of a community that had no ability to actually evolve or grow. It was born of rage and anger over a decision a single person made, Vitalik over the DAO hack. And they were given an opportunity to establish their own brand, their own path forward, their own tech stack. And instead, they just basically said, we're going to stay exactly the same, not change anything. And anybody who has the audacity to try to do that, it's evil. And we have to go at them and attack them. It's like, okay, so why would anybody ever choose to be part of this club? It just gets smaller every day and there's no upside to it. And so I don't see any of those elements in Cardano. I see a very welcoming community. I see a community that really wants to innovate. I see a community that's in love with the idea of new things coming. I see a community that wants to listen to people and work with people. And we have to do a better job at some of the institutions and structures. And, I could have done a much better job in founding of putting tighter controls and better governance in the core entities so that they behave differently and did things differently. But you know what? Despite that fact, we're here. Multi-billion-dollar ecosystem, millions of people. There's no decline. We're growing every year, and every year I think we get stronger and stronger. So I think next year is going to be our best year, and I think it's going to be our year with the biggest challenges. But we're going to exit the year stronger than we've ever been. And we're going to exit the year with a lot more clarity than we've ever had before, and in a very diverse and robust ecosystem. And every single person is going to fire on all cylinders. And so I look really forward to that. And I think it's going to be a shining gem. And it's going to show the rest of the cryptocurrency ecosystem what they need to do to be successful and what true decentralization is about.
Thank you, Charles. I really appreciate it. Feel better.
Ed, Cast Pool, then Mad Bull. So Ed, you're up.
What's up, Uncle Charlie? How you doing? Can you hear me
Yeah,
okay?
pretty good.
All right. Speaking on decentralization, one of the choke points for decentralization has always been sort of hardware concentration, or people hosting a bunch of nodes on one service provider like AWS and things like that. And I saw a post by one of the community members talking about like decentralized web hosting through Iagon in this case. And I thought that was that it was DDoS, resistant and things like this. And I was just curious if you think that, decentralized hardware, decentralized resources is kind of part and parcel to improving decentralization beyond just sort of protocol level stuff, and what you think about decentralized storage and compute and these types of things that we're starting to see in our ecosystem.
Why do you think the Cardano service layer exists? It's kind of funny. We announced it. All these people came out and said, "Oh, Charles is abandoning Cardano, and they're going to Midnight, and they're all leaving us alone, and Midnight's a scam, and it has no value to Cardano." And it's like, oh God, we got some work to do. The whole point of the Cardano service layer is exactly what you're talking about, is to add these types of services in. It's not good enough to say, well, Infura bad. Amazon bad. You have to offer a viable alternative, and you need infrastructure that's purpose built to be that viable alternative. So that's exactly where we need to go. And absolutely, decentralized network compute and storage is a requirement for Web3. We don't have it, so we don't have Web3 in any blockchain right now. We have Web 2.5, and we're being generous when we say that. Okay, so we have a chance as an ecosystem to be a leader there, and there's a lot of great projects across the ecosystem, and those technologies need to be collected, gathered, refined, incentivized properly, and then pulled in. And the partner chains concept, I think, is what's going to bring that to Cardano, and it's going to be an example of how people build dApps moving forward, where they deploy on Cardano and then they pull services from the partner chains, and one of them is decentralized hosting. Absolutely has to be done. The good news is that there's a great convergence of technologies, like all this data availability stuff, all this zero knowledge stuff. It really does remove a lot of the trust. And there's a lot of cool things with dynamic erasure encoding that was done years ago that I think is going to make a big comeback and be quite useful for sharding a blockchain, sharding a data space. But it's a hard problem, and it's solved in layers. Part is getting the right node infrastructure. So super nodes are necessary, and I really like what Firefly is doing. But then part of that is also getting the right interfaces and getting the right service cost. And so big part of competing with these things is predictable pricing. Or else why anybody in God's name would put their app on a decentralized infrastructure if they wake up every day and they have no idea how much it costs to run it? They can't be competitive with their neighbors. So you have to be able to match them on price and get predictability. And that's a big thing that we're chasing right now with Midnight is predictable pricing for the privacy stuff. Well, once you have that model and you've kind of figured that out and innovated that, that's a reusable model for infrastructure pricing for network, and it's something World Mobile potentially could use, and then storage, and that's what a decentralized infrastructure chain could use. So I think we're moving in that direction. It's just going to take a little bit of time and a little bit of effort, but we're getting there. And it's a long game. It's going to take years to decades to see all of this roll its way out, and you have to prime yourself for the marathon. And we're the best able to do that because we're doing it every step of the way with principles. The scientific core is not going anywhere. 196 papers, going to keep going with great code. Haskell isn't going anywhere. In fact, it's getting better and more efficient. The releases are getting more reliable. And obviously, we have the right philosophy in terms of these service layers of how to plug these types of things in. And we're doing it with decentralized governance. And we're measuring it with EDI and actually going and spreading EDI around and getting governments excited about it and institutions excited about it and make it the standard for decentralization measurements. So I think we're ahead of the game in many different dimensions, and I'm very excited about that.
Alrighty, so Castpool, Madbull, then Damio.
All right, thanks. Hi everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. And I hope you get better, Charles. Today we have Jed on Cardano. Next is USDM on the way, probably in November. But I think we are far behind USDT and USDT in terms of liquidity and product. So how can we onboard those products onto Cardano first? And then is it technically feasible to onboard those given the nature of the native tokens on Cardano?
Yeah, it's absolutely possible to do it. I mean, they're going to have to do it for Bitcoin at some point, right? It's more of a price situation. So back in 2021, the conversation was had, and I think Circle asked for an ungodly sum of money to integrate, the decision was made not to do that. The point of having a government of Cardano is they can start making some priorities about how to spend the resources of Cardano, which partnerships to pursue. So, next year there's going to be a budget. And if we can get 1694 forked in, then the community basically gets to decide how to spend the money of the treasury. And so every year you get to decide how much to spend and what to spend it on. And you can decide if you as a community think Circle is a real good thing for Cardano to incentivize Circle and work with Circle to get them integrated into Cardano and get that native issuance done. You can look at some of the historical data of other chains, smaller cap chains that integrated Circle and paid a lot to do that and what value it provided them. And that should be certainly part of the conversation. So, I'm neutral to all of this. These things are what they are, and some people think they're so important and that without them, the whole ecosystem can't thrive. Other people think it's a great opportunity to build competing products that have better properties or better philosophy about them. And the community as a whole has to decide this. And this is an example of what the power of decentralized governance is about, because it's not just saying, let's go do that. Guys, when you say stuff like that, you have to pay for it. Every partnership costs money. And whether you buy a Napster or you partner with a Reddit or you go and get a big company to do something like Mercedes-Benz, you have to ask yourself, okay, did we really get, as an ecosystem, a great ROI from this vanity relationship? Or was there something very significant here that added a lot of value? Yes or no? And every dollar you spend is a dollar you didn't spend somewhere else. So if you spend $10 million to integrate a stablecoin, you didn't spend $10 million training developers. You didn't spend $10 million investing in software development or marketing in general, or building a presence at every major conference in the planet. Okay. So resources are finite. You have to make those kinds of decisions. For our part, we're very interested in the stability mechanisms in general. We've set up a dedicated company specifically for this. And that company has a great leader, Sean Ford. He was the former CEO of Algorand. And he did Bank of Italy and Bank of South Africa and Marshall Islands. And he took over the El Salvador project after we bowed out of it. And I've known Sean for years, and he's a phenomenal leader and a great CEO. And I think he's going to supercharge the work that's been done on JED and really take it to the next level. And, he's going to help represent our interests across the board. And there's many up and coming projects like the Wyoming Stable Token project that I think is going to be phenomenal if it's led the right way. And there's still a lot of work to do. And it's really hard to do this as a public-private partnership as the state is learning. And we'll see if there's a good RFI and RFP process to participate in there. And there's dozens of other opportunities as well. So we're obviously going to chase that. And yeah, of course, Cardano is represented there. And other people have their own stable token ideas and projects, and they're chasing that. And obviously there's incumbents, and those incumbents come with their pros and their cons. The cons are that they're beholden potentially to outside powers and influences that may not be compatible with our ethics. On the other hand, they have scale. So, you as a community have to decide that and decide which one makes sense, or which collection of ones makes sense.
Okay, thanks a lot, Charles. Do you have maybe in mind the amount that was asked by Circle in order to integrate USDC on Cardano in the past?
I think it was eight figures. That's what I heard.
Okay, thanks. So I yield, and I hope you get better.
Mad Bull.
Hey, Charles. Great day to you, Charles, and IOG and everybody, Cardano community. It's me, Cardano Man Bull. I just wanted to say something about this Fund 11 thing. I understand that it's really directed towards the Treasury, but if I wanted to submit a proposal to change the name of Cardano to Cardano Man Bull, could that be possible? Also, I saw you in your helicopter, and I remember during the bull run when we crossed 50 Cent, you played 50 Cent song. When we crossed the dollar, you were in the fields on your four-wheeler riding, and I said to myself, Charles is riding a helicopter. What the hell is going on? What can we expect to see this coming bull run, like at these price landmarks? Can we get some more? What can we see? What can we as a community expect to see? It's probably no telling. It's probably spontaneous, but
These are the hard-hitting questions that people live for. Yeah, actually, first with respect to the can we name Cardano Mad Bull? I mean, if you can get people to vote for it, I guess that's what we're doing. So get your grassroots started, man. You got to start campaigning. With respect to if this is a mega bull run and everything looks pretty crazy and good, SpaceX is selling tickets. I guess I'd go to space station. Would you guys like to see me in space? Would that be fun? Can I take a Hosky in space?
Absolutely not. We need you, Charles, okay? We got to protect your bag at all costs. I just wanted to say that.
Speak for
I'll be
yourself. Take Hosky up. Go for it.
Hosky in space. There we go. Yeah. We can get some ADA in space. That'd be fun. So all right. SpaceX 2025. You guys heard it here.
All right, it's gonna be Damio, then AI.
Yeah, it's Damien. Thanks for having me, Charles. Thanks for hosting the space. Husky, nice meeting you. Congratulations of NFT Project of the Year, of course. Question. I saw the last stream you did about midnight, and I got two questions. One of them is you need a super node to run a partner chain. Is that always gonna be the case, or will the partner chains also can the partner chains also run without a super node?
Oh no, they can run without a super node. It's just you need to be able to wire together infrastructure that you can run many nodes at the same time. And the thing is that if you have hundreds of partner chains at any given moment, at least one of the chains could be running into a configuration issue or a problem. So if you're a stake pool operator, you don't want a situation where you have a cascading failure and it shuts your entire infrastructure down and you stop making blocks across the board. So you want localized failures. And so the point of a supernode is containerization and a service-oriented or a microservice architecture that allows you to basically fail gracefully. So it's more of a maintenance thing when you think about that. But the individual partner chains obviously have their own nodes and incentives, and actually will have their own consensus in addition to what Cardano can provide. That's one of the reasons why Substrate's infrastructure is very nice for this type of stuff, and why we took it and hybridized it, is that they already have a whole philosophy on how to do this that's battle tested, and it works really well because it comes out of the Rust world. And Gavin's a good architect, as is Thomas Obermeyer, and Thomas now works for us actually. So no, you don't need to run a supernode to run the partner chain, but if you're a stake pool operator, it's probably the way to go.
Yeah, all right. And the second question I had is about the when you create your partner chain, you have a native token on Cardano. Will that native token will it have its own liquidity pool and stuff like that?
It could. It depends on the tokenomics of the native token. So there's what we want to do with Midnight, but then obviously things can diverge. But I think a dual token model is the way to go. And they follow different monetary policies because you still need some resource to decide on governance of the system as well as security and parameter changes of the system. So that's not ADA because that's a partner chain. And so you need a native asset for that. And that would make sense to do that on Cardano because all the infrastructure is built for that. You don't have to rebuild it on the partner chain. The partner chain could also encumber different demands. And then you need some sort of fuel to price out the services of that partner chain. And for the use cases, we're thinking like decentralized AI or teleco or privacy stuff or decentralized infrastructure. Makes a lot of sense to have that be predictable and have a different generative function. So that would be the native asset on the partner chain, and one would probably generate the other. But we'll publish a paper on it next year, shortly before anything launches with Midnight. With the incentivized testnet, and then over time people just learn that model. But there's plenty of time to kind of roll that out and explain it, talk about it.
Yeah, thank you. That were my questions, and I think a lot of community members as well. For example, when you released Midnight, and there was little information about it, everybody starts speculation, and I love the way you explained it on your last stream. So it's like a classroom for me. So it was a good explanation. So thanks for that. And thanks for having me.
This is crypto. We're good at speculating, making up stuff. So we got AI, Colin, and then Fractal.
Hey there, Charles. It's me, AI, coming from cold Detroit. It's so cold in the D. Sorry about our run-in last time in the viral moment. Paulie butchering the conversation like that. I'm not for that. I like true and transparent journalism, and I feel the conversation that we had extended beyond the boundaries of what was being portrayed there by old Paulie. Nonetheless, after that conversation, I went to work. I've been working relatively diligently, reaching out to all of my network here, and I've came up with this spectacular idea on how to generate organic growth and outreach and keep a slim budget. So what I decided to do was put together a nonprofit event here for the city of Detroit for the after school program for the computer science and blockchain awareness and creative art studio for film and creative design here in Detroit. We already got the facility. We got that situated. So that's checked. So then what I said was, how can I get my NFT ecosystem or other projects inside of the ecosystem to participate? So what we decided to do was get a mansion, and I have access to Hollywood figures. I don't want to throw their names out because of NDAs and respect, but they are in participation of creating the first ever, to my acknowledgement, real world of Web3 crypto Cardano style. I will be there. So it's Cardano. We already have some big names like Ben Armstrong that will be live casting there. And it's my way to kind of bring awareness to the ecosystem. But I really wanted to touch base with you. And I said, we got IOHK Media to see how we can get you guys involvement in what it is that we have going on here for the city of Detroit to make it impactful. And to prove old Paulie, he had the wrong idea. I'm Cardano to the core. That's why the Ada is in my name. I will never betray my community, nor my family, nor people that I know are sincere about genuinely making an impact, especially for lives like mine. I came from the block to now the blockchain, and the one thing that I went through all my experiences I would never want to see is a kid have to venture off into that life, and so this is the only way that I can think with all my power and little resources that I do have. I'm not a giant like IOHK and things of that nature, but I feel like these little small progressive steps from sales and marketing experience, and I have a lot. That's where I transitioned over. It was sales and marketing. And I come to know one thing about the product and advertising. One, you can have a billboard on the road, and you can walk by that billboard and say, hey, there's a billboard there. I wonder what this is, right? Or you can have a road barrier, right? So there's a sign in the road tells you, hey, take this detour, or you put a barrier, and that barrier forces things to change. So in order for me to implement the change that I hope to see, I kind of have to force it. And I don't like being a forceful individual. I like to be one that is more unisync or omnipresence. You know the vibes. I seen you read that book too. My mom told me. She said, oh, that Charlie, he's reading your Stoic books. I said, what are you talking about? Oh, yeah, some Egyptian book. And then I went, and sure enough, you were looking. So you know about these practices of manifestation. And I know that me and you together, like the Mad Bull said, we got a synergy here, Charles, and this is our time and our opportunity to make a real impact. Miami, I got some of the biggest names. So what do you say, Charles? I mean, can I get some sort of public endorsement, commitment? Can I get a little support? That's all.
Well, yeah, I'd love to come and speak. As I said, I really wanted to come out and visit you guys in Detroit, and it'd be a heck of a lot of fun to
Oh
hang
no, this is
out.
for Miami. No. So let me help you out here. I bought a
Well,
mansion,
I
got a
heard I
mansion.
heard Detroit there for a second there. Where did the Miami part come? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
so
got the
so
ADHD,
Art
man.
Basel. So we got the Art Basel in Miami, right? Coming up,
Right.
it's a very public forward speaking event. It's a great opportunity to network and connect with people outside of crypto, like high influential individuals who I am associated with, and they are in production of the actual filming there. So we're going to be filming, backlogging the journals of Web3 participant cross chain, not just Cardano. I'm a Cardano member, of course, but cross chain. So from Solana, Ethereum, they'll be all staying in this one house. Some are music artists, some are content creators, some are project
Okay.
founders. And we're going to be documenting that so that it's like Netflix ready, Apple ready for distribution. Okay. And also to put together the proposal, the Hearts and Minds Initiative for the city of Detroit, right? Because we really want to bring focus on the technological wave and making sure that the kids without internet access have a facility to not only come do their homework, but also gain skill sets or exposure to those skill sets. So that's why we're filming it down in Miami, is because it's going to grab a lot of the attention from the bigger names. It gives us a higher level of outreach on, social media
Right.
platforms. Yeah, so it's a higher level. It's the new age marketing, and it keeps the overhead low. And then through that, we hope to highlight the individuals and where they're at in their career, because we did this 2 years ago, but we didn't
Right.
document it. So we decided to document it, and now we want to, put that forth to the world. It's just going wild.
Send it over. Send it over, JJ. We'll talk. I'm definitely interested. It'd be
JJ,
fun to talk.
JJ? Tell JJ to send me a DM, Johnny, on the spot, okay? Because it's right around the corner. It's
Oh, you
December.
know who JJ is? JJ's my chief of staff. I think he's
Oh,
even.
okay. I'm a little lost. JJ, My DMs are so swarmed right now. Send me a DM and say message so I know, because I'm like Charlie right now. He's probably got a
All
million
right.
requests. Thank you for
All
the
right.
All right.
shout
And
out.
what you got to do is you got to have your guys just go ahead and tweet bomb JJ's Twitter, blow him up a little bit, timestamp it, blow it up. That's what you're gonna do. All right. Great talking to you, man. All right, next person.
We got Colin, Fractal, and Martin. Guys, if you can keep it short and sweet, please.
Oh yeah, no problem. Hello everyone. My question centers around Senate strategies to push mass adoption. I want to thank you guys for setting up this space and Charles spending time with us. We're setting up MAV 100's first community decentralized telecommunications network in Leavenworth in partnership with World Mobile, and our network will be operating in December. Our School Alliance SPO has ground out 50 blocks for the kids in the area. And my question is about integrating Midnight into this project. How does Midnight integrate into communities and with community-owned infrastructure? And how do you see us talking about it and pushing this to new adopters?
Well, Midnight's right now in building like an onion, so it has to get the dev experience right. That's something we didn't do so well with Cardano. We emphasized a lot on the staking experience. We built the strongest backbone that you could ever build for proof of stake cryptocurrency, and I argue much better than Ethereum's. But then we were kind of late to the game with extended UTXO in our testing infrastructure, and ultimately, as the CEO of IO, I'm to blame for that. I tried really diligently and hard to get a high fidelity test net out, and there was just never really the momentum required to get that done. So what ended up happening is we had things like the Plutus Playground and other piece of infrastructure, and there was a mismatch between that DevX and the DevX on Cardano. So Plutus version 1 ended up being a lot of what would normally be a proper beta test of a development model. And the people who built on Cardano suffered greatly for that. They had to kind of work through it. It was very painful to do that on mainnet. So I said to our people, never again. It's never going to happen again. If we build anything that has a development model, you have to test early and test often and have a high fidelity environment for development. So what launched November 13th was Midnight's DevNet, and that DevNet was really about really acid testing Compact and Kachina and the entire development model of Midnight at as aggressive of a level as possible. And so about 1,500 teams have signed up to build on Midnight. And over the next few months, they'll be onboarded, and they're the concierge process and white glove treatment, a lot of DevRel that goes into that. And their job basically is break the network and build lots of stuff and blow it up. Now, what'll happen is that you build layer after layer of this. So you go from a DevNet to a testnet to an incentivized testnet to mainnet. And as you walk down that road, you start talking less and less about DevX and DevRel because you've already really gotten a great model and you have a good cohort of starter entities that are building interesting things. And you start talking about ecosystem groups and ecosystem development. That was another thing in Cardano where, it was underwhelming for a lot of people. People felt that there should have been more of an approach similar to what happened with Polygon or Algorand or others. The jury's out on whether that's a good idea or not, but obviously there was not as much capital in the Cardano ecosystem as there were in those ecosystems. And so with Midnight, I think it has to be built differently and dealt with differently to be able to build out a great ecosystem for it. But we're not starting from zero like we did with Cardano. There's obviously all the Cardano core developers and dApps and DeFi, but I'd like to bring in the Bitcoin developers and the Ethereum developers as well into that conversation, and the Polkadot developers into that conversation, because the technology allows for that cross bridging. So ecosystem development is going to be kind of the next major hurdle after we do the dev, but I'm very impressed with what's happened with the DevNet and how hard that team's worked and what they've done. And it's been a labor that has learned enormously from the mistakes of the past. And I think we can follow akin to the same for ecosystem development. Now, how that would specifically plug into what you're asking, it's a question that's a bit too soon. It's a question I think we can answer in quarter 1 and quarter 2 of 2024. when we get to that stage, after we clear the first iteration of the dev nets, and what we're doing right now with just testing the core development model.
No, that sounds awesome. I mean, the speed at things that Cardano is moving right now, I really look forward to it. I think Q1, Q2 is going to come up faster than we're ready for.
All right, we have Fractal, Martin, and then Umar.
Thank you, Hosky, and thank you, Uncle Charlie, for hanging out with us. I'm really excited. I think the future is here. Elon Musk is blowing up the Starship, and he's sending it out to space today, I think. And then we got like Midnight coming up. I'm really excited about that. Honestly, I was a big fan of Monero, and I like the privacy aspect of it. What a stark contrast to like the governments putting out the CBDCs. I think that's like what's needed is more privacy, and I think that I'm excited about like the side chains of Midnight, like all the opportunity that opens. I think my question kind of is, do you think that'll open up like Silk Road style marketplaces, or like do you think there's any like regulatory headwinds that will come because of that? And also, I think it's kind of punk rock, and I like it, and Uncle Charlie never disappoints. He's like a punk rocker in disguise. He's like got that not anti-government, but like I don't know. But I like that the freedom goes to the people. That's like the important thing to me. So, thank you.
It's really thank you for the kind words. It's really important that you build technology that preserves and protects freedom of association, commerce, and expression, especially in an era where there's a lot of people that are very comfortable with mass and wholesale restrictions of our expressions and our associations and our commerce. And it's so profoundly un-American to me to have this idea that you have to ask for permission to do anything, and a committee has to form, and they decide always that while you may get permission, they're always going to give arbitrary limitations to that because they know better, even though they know nothing about what you're doing. I mean, look at the world as a whole. You got wars everywhere. You got totalitarian regimes like China. You've got all this going on, and it's patently absurd to say, trust us, we know better. Nobody knows better. If we've learned anything in an age of COVID, and we've learned anything in the age of censorship and all of this insanity that's occurred, is that no one's really in charge and nobody really knows what the hell they're doing. There's just wholesale incompetence at the top. And to me, it's really important that you preserve and build and protect tools that maximize human freedom and give us the ability to basically talk to each other, express each other, trade with each other. And so to me, it's always been very important to preserve ACE. And Midnight is certainly a vanguard in that dimension, because it also is required when you talk about basic human rights like your right to privacy with medicine. I don't think any politician in the world really will go out there and publicly advocate that all your medical records should be made public. That's just a line that most people would not be willing to cross. It's not fair. And so, yeah, if we say blockchain is going to solve all the problems of healthcare, tell me how to do that without snark technology and privacy preserving technologies. You need to do that. So these systems have a very real use case. And maybe an 80-year-old person with no technical experience who just so happens to be in a leadership position may say, well, the only way to run these systems and put them back doors, well, then you've destroyed any sense of fidelity and security or globalization of those systems, because the Chinese won't trust the American backdoors and the Americans won't trust the Chinese backdoors. Sorry, that's just not how the world works. You cannot put backdoors in these types of systems. So I've always been a strong advocate for these for human freedom and these things, and it's reflected in the work that I do, which at times makes me somewhat incompatible with venture capital, and at times makes me somewhat incompatible with the mainstream media. And lo and behold, the more popular and successful I get, the more tell-all books tend to be written, and the more vicious the criticism tends to be. There seems to be a strong correlation with that. I notice how vicious and the attacks on Elon Musk are. I just woke up this morning and had some tea, and I'm sitting there watching him launch something bigger than the Statue of Liberty into space, and do it flawlessly. Yeah, okay, they had RUD, but they expected it, and they gained enormous amounts of data, and the pad's not destroyed. He's basically running a one-man Apollo mission, and he's doing it at a 1/100th the cost the U.S. government is, and that's just like a side gig, along with drilling into people's brains and putting in brain-computer interfaces and running Twitter and running Tesla and all these other things, and he gets disinvited from having dinner with Xi. So I guess he doesn't get to hang out with Larry Fink or any of these other guys. It's an extraordinary thing, and I think it's just people want to change things, or people who want to give power to the masses are not welcomed in elite small circles. It's another reason why I never incorporated any business infrastructure in California and Silicon Valley. I'm in Wyoming, and I'm going to tell you that's about as far as you can go to get away from elite people. And it's Jackson Hole, we don't pay attention to it, but nobody in Wheatland or Gillette or Cheyenne or Laramie has any illusions of being invited to the secret club, or setting an effigy on fire in front of Moloch. Okay, we're dealing with cattle out there, and it's refreshing because you deal with real people who have integrity and have character, and they don't fire the people that built their companies in a midnight board action or something like that, just to gain a little bit more power. That cutthroatness is not there. On the other hand, you get excluded from the conversation and delegitimized from the conversation. Joe Rogan is a great example of this. He's sitting down there in Austin, and he has more audience combined than all of cable news. Every single cable news station combined, he has more audience. Yet you get CNN basically say he is the illegitimate alt-right news source when they have 200,000 people listening. I just don't understand how we live in a society where people with 200,000 watchers that are mostly AstroTurf or empty terminals at airports that they have to pay for can basically say, oh, the guy who has 25 million people listen to him every day is not legitimate and doesn't speak, doesn't get involved in topics America cares about. It's pretty extraordinary when you really think about it. So these protocols, I think, are speech, and the whole point of them is to preserve and protect human freedom and speech and expression and our ability to do commerce and our ability to associate with each other. And I'm never going to build a protocol that doesn't do that. I'm never going to participate in a project that doesn't do that. And the minute that they say we should hand control to the few, I'm out. I just want nothing to do with it. I'd much rather be the weirdo in Wyoming who's preaching libertarian values than be the insider guy who gets all the nice awards and gets to go to the fancy dinners and gets accolades in California or New York. I could think of no greater hell.
No offerings to Moloch, but hopefully smoking a bison at the ranch is never out of the question. So we have now Martin, Umar, Shaggy, and then Jay Shy.
I can't tell you how much I want to start talking about Moloch and everything that you were just talking about, Charles, but bloody hell. It's great to chat to you. So my name's Martin. I was born on November 5th. And for those of you who don't know, Charles will know that's an important date because that's the date that the DeLorean goes back to in Back to the Future. November 5th, 1955. But it's also Charles's birthday as well as my birthday. And Charles, I'm so delighted.
And it is Guy Fawkes Day as well. Remember the 5th of November.
I'm going to interfere here and also say that was the date Hosky token was minted, so we're all up here. It was meant to be.
It was. Right, well, we're all going to get married in a large ceremony next to the owl.
The parallels run deep. Anyway, so my question is really simple, Charles. Given that we are birthday buddies, November 5th, 1987. I don't think Hosky token was minted in 1987, but I was, and Charles was. And I'm just going to ask a quick question. What did you do on your birthday this year? And no, two main questions. What did you do on your birthday this year? And what was your favorite birthday memory throughout your life?
Well, I woke up in Dubai and flew to Greece, and I went to a very small town in northern Greece and visited the Necromantium, which is the Oracle of Hades. And I actually went to where the Greeks believed the gates of the underworld were, and actually got to see it. And it's a really impressive chamber. It was built 3,000 years ago, and they designed it as an anechoic chamber, so it absorbs all sound. So you can think to yourself, wow, okay, 3,000 years ago, people would go down here high on LSD or ergot, I guess, and they would burn sulfur and have dogs bark to emulate Cerberus, and they'd be in complete darkness in this anechoic chamber, basically hallucinating that they're going to hell. So that was a really fun thing. And then I flew down to Athens after visiting the Temple of Hades, and went and met up with a Greek singer, and they had a nice birthday party for me. And she was wonderful. She sung in like 5 different languages, and they had 4 cakes and all these things. So it was a hell of a birthday, actually. And so kudos to my people for putting that together. And I was just the passenger who got dragged along from one thing to the other. Probably my favorite birthday memory of all time. I was in Egypt years ago, and the Egyptian government lit up the pyramids for me for my birthday, and that was wild to be sitting in a tent, eating and looking at the Great Pyramids of Egypt, lit up. And I was like, wow, that's crypto's made it. Of course, the bull markets went away. The pyramid lighting also went away as well. Nobody cared about us crypto people in 2022 or 2023, but 2021 was a great year. It shows you people are a lot nicer back in the day.
Well, I'm going to send you a DM next year on your birthday to say happy birthday. And I want to say to Fractals, you were talking about the Silk Road. I'm a therapist in the National Health Service in the UK, and I would proudly, as a fully doxed man, represent a legalized nature, all natural psilocybin, liberty cat mushroom foraging Silk Road trip. I think that would be awesome. But thanks so much for your time, everyone.
Alrighty, we have Shaggy, Jay and then Iagon.
All right. Thank you guys for letting me up. First of all, I'm going to try and keep this as brief as possible. One, I wanted to first say Midnight is super exciting, especially working in the adult entertainment industry. That sort of stuff will allow us to mint and distribute adult content without the fear of it being accessible to minors. So major boost for us here. It's also exciting because of the nature of contracts. You can kind of keep stuff in the dark now, so people don't get to see everything that's in your contract. So it's gonna be cool for that. Make NDAs a little bit more useful on the blockchain. People can actually like mint their contracts on the blockchain, so they're actually immutable. That'll be cool. But I wanted to real quickly circle back to the last space I got up on here, listening to when AI was talking to Charles about just getting him to go visit the hoods around America. And it's important to me. I'm from Memphis. I come from a less than resource rich environment. And one of the things I think it's important for me to note, real quickly, let me pull up the stats. Okay. Memphis is number 5 in cities larger than 100,000 that are unbanked. Like we just have a ton of people with no bank account, no access, no nothing. Another thing, internet access. I want to say only 30% of households in Memphis have broadband internet access. Major problem, right? Doing blockchain stuff, which I do at my local libraries and stuff, like we do coding clubs and all that other things. It's really difficult if people don't have internet access to onboard people because it's not a private internet connection at the library. I don't think this is something most people take into account. So I can't really onboard someone to the blockchain and get them set up with a wallet on a public internet access. Like that's starting wrong from scratch. So it's an important thing I think we touch on. We got to start these workshops here, bro, in the US. Like man, Charles, I love what you guys are doing, banking the unbanked and going around the world and everything. That's cool. We have so many places here at home like Detroit, Memphis, New Orleans, St. Louis, Baltimore. Like, dude, these people are underrepresented. There's no resources, there's no access. And it's going to take, I think the onboarding thing is really an easy question to solve. Find the community leaders, the people with connections like AI. I don't want to say myself, but I'm connected here in Memphis, like myself. That way we can be the representatives here. We can reach out, we can onboard people. And onboarding is going to be different for everyone, right? Projects like Noom and Six City, Demu, Soundrig, they're the music industry, right? in Cardano. It's super easy to onboard an artist to the ecosystem because I can just tell them, hey, bro, this is a distribution platform. You can just sell your stuff for Cardano instead of money. Build you a little bag of crypto. I can help onboard them and everything. And those projects have done immense work bringing new people to the space. And I think it's rather underrepresented here. Thankfully, Noom got funding, so shout out to them. But things like that. Stripper coin with the adult content. There's other ways we can onboard and bring people to this space. It's not just going to be degens. It's not just going to be investors. There's people who want to utilize this blockchain.
Yeah,
So
100%, man. And you're bringing up a very valid point. When people think about banking the unbanked or connecting the unconnected, they have this idea of some guy living in the middle of nowhere in a mud hut, a country you've never heard of. And the reality is that there's a big chunk of America that's unbanked and a big chunk of America that's unconnected. I'll tell you a story. So years ago, I was up on my ranch and I see these wild horses running by, and I was like, the hell are those horses doing on my ranch? And I'm trying to figure out who owns them. So I look around, I start asking around, and I say, all right, well, I'm going to go to the local mountain bar, and I'm just going to ask around because there's going to be some old dude at the mountain bar that knows about them horses. So go to the mountain bar that's nearby my ranch and ask around, and sure enough, they say, oh yeah, there's this guy, we call him Trader Rick. He lives up on the mountain by himself, and he raises those horses. So I hunt this guy down, and I know he's a former carpenter because he showed me his hands, and he's missing fingers. Makes moonshine, lives off the grid, doesn't have internet connection, no phone, no nothing, barely has electricity. I think he's stealing it. So this guy is like as off grid as you can imagine. He's living right there in the United States of America, and his business is horses. And I actually wanted to get one of his horses, and unfortunately that horse died. And so, but it was a real pretty horse. So you see it all the time in Wyoming and other places. You're in Memphis, you see it there. You see it in Detroit, you see it in DC, and you say, how is it we're the richest country in the world, and we have $113 billion that we can fork over to Ukraine, but then for some reason we have millions of Americans that don't have access to the internet, millions of Americans that don't have access to reliable education, food, drinking water. For God's sakes, there's lead in the fucking water. It's a national embarrassment, and it just shows you the priorities of the leadership are not aligned with the poor. I don't really believe this is a racist nation. I think this is a nation that hates poor people. And if every statistic you look at, you can see how bad it is for people that are low on the economic ladder. So one of the reasons why we're so excited about World Mobile, and so excited about a lot of things we do is that it's not an Africa project or an Indonesia project. It's a global project. And actually, we're talking with World Mobile right now about how do we get aerostats and nodes out in Gillette, Wyoming? How do we connect the unconnected in the United States of America and get that at the lowest possible rate? It's the same making people be their own wallet. You need computing as well. So how do you get low-cost computing devices to people? These types of things. Is if the only way to participate in this network is you have to build supercomputers, look at Bitcoin. You have to set up a vertically integrated mining facility and spend hundreds of millions of dollars and have access to flare gas and all this other stuff to be competitive. Well, with Cardano, you can go buy a Nook and get one used and go and run a stake pool, and it's a few $100. You see, so there's a lot there, and I think that is an underrepresented thing that people don't really take into account when they think about the equity of these systems. And the point of Intersect is to bring those voices together. And when we talk about the budget of Cardano, there has to be allocations in the budget to talk about onboarding in a more holistic and global sense instead of onboarding the obvious people. VCs don't care about this at all. Every one of them, they say they do equity, inclusion, diversity, and all that garbage language. They say it, but they don't give a shit. They really don't. But we can care as a community, and we can care by the technology we build and how we approach these things. And I care a lot, and it's one of the things why we designed all the protocols the way we did. It would be very easy to copy a super intense node structure that Solana has, but it's pretty exclusive when your blockchain is like 400 terabytes and you require a supercomputer to run it. It's a lot harder to write a protocol where you can run it with a Raspberry Pi or a Nook. A lot harder to do that. And there's a lot more you have to think about. We don't get any credit from that, from the VC class or from the Reddit people. They say we're all idiots. We don't know what we're doing. But at the same time, you'll think, well, which one is more inclusive? and which one allows more people to participate. Talk about Mithril. What does Mithril do? It allows you to have a full node experience with a light client. So you could be on an old cell phone and you can still get a high degree of security inside these systems. Again, we don't get a lot of credit for that, but it's there. And it's there because we want to be as inclusive as possible and bring as
It
many
don't even
people as
gotta be
possible
that
to the
serious,
system.
Charles. Like really, like just basic onboarding to people with wallets and showing them like how to move money, and then like, hey, this is an
Yeah, but
opportunity
I
for
don't
you
want them to
guys to
get screwed
distribute
though.
my
It's
content.
not, it's not,
I
you
mean, yeah,
can't,
yeah, yeah, I totally get it. But dude, you're
yeah,
not gonna be able to save everyone. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's certain levels of BYO. Like, do your own research. We're always gonna have to do, but being able to provide educational workshops in these underrepresented communities in
yeah,
America, that's my big focus right now. Like, Cardano wants to grow, and we really want to reach out to everyone around the world. Well, look, bro, we cannot be forgetting these people here at home because, like you said, equity, right? What good is equity? All this talk of equity. If these people, it's like Jesus. These people don't even know about Cardano, bro. How are they? They're gonna miss the boat. You get what I'm saying? Like they're gonna miss the boat. And this has been an opportunity for me over the last year, just growing and getting to meet a lot of people. And I'm able to do things now I never would have thought I could do a year ago. But it's only because I knew about it. I had friends who cared about me enough to teach me about this and sit beside me and show me, and we're just going to have to rely on people in these communities to do that. And not every DGen and not every holder is going to want to do that. They're just
yeah.
not. So we got to lean on those people. That's all I wanted to say. And I appreciate you, Charles. Thank you for having me. Hosky as well. Legends. I see a lot of legends up here. So love y'all.
Cheers.
And I think it was Noah that missed the boat, not Jesus, by the way. We have Jay Shy, then we have Iagon, and then Blockjock.
Hey, Charles. So I'm a software engineer at JPEG Store, and I have done a lot of development work on Cardano in general. But in addition to that, I'm also actually a student who is hopefully in my last year of college right now. And so last summer, I was approached by one of my professors who was interested in what I do for a living, what I do for a job currently, and wanted to learn more about blockchain. So I was super excited when I proposed, and he agreed to the idea of designing a curriculum to introduce blockchain technology to undergraduate students. And so that's what I did all summer, along with all the other work I'm doing as well. And I got to say, it was more challenging than I was expecting, to be totally honest, but also the use of Cardano for that purpose is actually a really, really great one because the principles and academic research that's gone into the designing of Cardano is fantastic for security and all of that stuff, but it also makes it map really well to a classroom. And so along with the sort of educating the general user, I was just kind of wondering what you thought about how we as an ecosystem could educate the next stage or next generation of protocol builders or dApp developers that might not know about blockchain technology at all, but they are computer science students or they're software engineering people that want to get into that stuff. So how can we sort of get the development education to undergraduate or graduate students that might not otherwise have access to that information?
Yeah, we've done it on our side at the Blockchain Technology Lab with Steve Lupin over at University of Wyoming. And then also we have an undergraduate course that we developed at University of Edinburgh. And then, we do vocational training with Lars's Haskell course and Plutus course. And you probably ran across the Plutus Pioneers stuff while, learning how to be a developer in the Cardano ecosystem. But you bring up a valid question, and one of the things that we're long overdue on is actually to write either a monograph or a book on basically protocol design, consensus design, for cryptocurrencies. Ouroboros is really where it's at, and we kind of discovered with all the papers we've written how to do this the right way, both from the foundational modeling, like with GKL, and then later the application of universal composition to GKL, to the actual protocol engineering and how to elaborate and write these things down in a reasonable way. But there's a backlog of work that needs to be done there. From a developer viewpoint, we are working really hard to try to get a mastering Cardano out with O'Reilly or another major publisher. Excuse me. And my hope is that can act as kind of a Bible. There's already been, some great work the community has done. But then on an academic curriculum viewpoint, there needs to be some canonical textbooks that people use, like Wattenhofer's book or, any of these guys. And I have some ideas on how to expand that. But it's a process. And you're absolutely right to say Cardano's way, way, way ahead of the curve because we took the time to actually write things in a way that academics can understand, whereas our competitors have not. And so it's a very easy translation, but you can't rest on your laurels, and it has to be a priority. And it's something I want to make sure gets included in the 2024 budget for Cardano when we talk through Intersect. I've spent millions of dollars of my own money, pursuing this throughout the years, and we've made enormous progress. But we probably need a more systematic way to approach it for 2024 and beyond to ensure that we get the proper representation in computer science programs.
All right, we have Iagon, Blockjock, then Woodsy.
Hey Charles, great talking to you again. It's Navjeet. I talked to you briefly. Pleasure talking to you on at the summit at the award ceremony there. We left off the conversation a bit short because you were a bit busy, so wanted to just continue that conversation. And I also talked to Aaron from Midnight as well, the CEO. And you also mentioned previously in the Twitter Spaces today about sharing data, decentralized data hosting. So if anyone doesn't know, just Iagon is basically working on decentralized storage and compute. And what we do differently is we learn the behavior of resource providers in terms of performance, availability, location. We provide, and thereby allowing us to provide one-click compliance for different data regulations around the world. So very similar ethos in terms of Midnight and what Midnight's trying to achieve. My question is in regards to when you mentioned the decentralized data hosting, are you guys looking at third parties for the infrastructure layer? And I know that IOHK has been busy developing a lot of things. So I'm wondering if you guys are open to using tools that are made by the community for the Cardano community, and then what are your plans on the infrastructure for?
Oh, yeah, I'd love to use community tools where and when that makes sense, and I've really pushed a mandate in the company to do that. There's unfortunately a bit of insular culture where there's a not invented here, and at IO we tend to build things from the ground up and ignore other things. And I've been trying really hard to change that culture. And we've made some great success and progress with it, but in some cases we haven't. With respect to decentralized hosting and decentralized infrastructure, I think that's a perfect partner chain, and I'd like to see some competition there. 2 or 3 of them kind of form with different philosophies and different viewpoints on how to do it. And it would be a lot of fun to collaborate and partner with people and kind of help them get along and provide some basic science support of protocols to help those, and then watch those people go and commercialize it. Much akin to like how the Cody relationship works, where we designed JED on paper and did a lot of foundational engineering to show how one would use it. But then what we did is, gave it to Cody and said, go commercialize that. And they've been doing it to various degrees of success. So I like that flow. And I think there's definitely some conversations we can have along those lines, because there's a lot of researchers on our end that are very curious and keen to do stuff in this space. And it's an essential component to the decentralization of Cardano. It's not optional. You have to have it, or else you're not going to be decentralized. And then why are we here? What are we doing? We're just saying stuff. We don't actually believe the stuff we're saying.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, right now on the testnet, we have a little bit over 700 nodes. And so we have also working on kind of a prototype for our decentralized web. You talked about Raspberry Pis in terms of how Cardano structure, and something simple as that for storage and compute is something that we're also going to be building out. So people can purchase those devices as well and run a node, an Iagon node as well. So definitely keen to explore that and see. We are on the Midnight DevNet, so when we're talking to Aaron and the product manager there as well. So yeah, thanks for the answer.
Yeah, and I'd love to find a way to work with you guys. You guys are rock stars.
So we got Blockjock, Johnny, and then Bikram. Blockjock, you're up.
Hey guys, first off, thanks Hosky for hosting this space, and woof to you. And Charles, thanks for coming on and taking our questions. First off, thank you for building the platform that I, through my own actions, bring choice and therefore prosperity to myself, my family, and everyone around me. I just want to thank you for that. I wrote this thing out so I don't forget exactly the question that I want to do. Given the current landscape of regulation and the desire for builders like Meehan and its USDM fiat-backed stablecoin, and others like Drip Drops and Main Street working to give direct fiat on and off to Cardano, what advantages would direct fiat on and off ramps and fiat stablecoins bring to Cardano?
Well, you need it for a host of financial applications like lending. You need it for marketplaces. You need it for decentralized exchanges to work. I mean, it is important to have some instrument that represents value stability. Whether that be cross-chain or not depends on how much cross-chain traffic you have floating around, and also the nature of where the DeFi ecosystem is. And we're starting to get to that point where it does need to expand beyond Cardano. Our TVL is getting high enough, and there's enough volume that's on it. But overall, it's going to happen. We're going to have asset-backed and algorithmic stablecoins in abundance to our needs. You invent them out of necessity, and they come and port when there's enough traffic. Excuse me. Wish I got some water. It's a situation where, one second. Sorry, coughing a lot there. Starting to lose my voice.
Now you're good to go. I heard you on the AMA. It looks like you're just getting over a cold. So yeah, my feelings go out to you there.
And so anyway, just these things will happen, and everybody makes a big deal out of them. But guys, it's a thing that happens organically, and the community will get where it needs to go, and everybody's pushing in their own direction with it. So is there a specific question you had, or a specific concern you had, or is it more just generally about the stablecoin side of things? Or
it's just more so the builders, I think, and what we're doing currently on Cardano. In essence, the amount of effort and time, this, that goes into these particular projects is a lot. And I think currently for myself personally, without fiat on and off ramps that can avoid a SEX and go direct into Cardano, I wouldn't stay here as long as I would think if that were something that were not possible, because I do believe
it is possible, but you have to understand that fiat on and off ramps are always regulated entities, and there are several that do support the Cardano ecosystem. And they're just like SEXs in that they have a regulatory oversight. There's KYC. There's all this stuff. There's no way to avoid that. You could try
to
with
explain it to me. Believe me, we've been working on that for quite a bit. But I think avoiding the SEX and the fees associated with it, and potentially going direct into Cardano, would facilitate a much easier transition for some who are mixed on whether or not they're going to do any business over here in Cardano.
Yeah, and there's plenty. I think MoonPay was one, and there's a few floating around that are doing that. And the best point of contact for fiat on and off ramp integration is at the wallet layer. And I know at the Lace side we've had some discussions, and I know other wallets in the ecosystem have also had discussions about how to do that in an interesting way, and also different payment mechanisms to purchase ADA. For example, can you use a credit card to buy ADA? Does it always require a wire transfer? Like, when you say fiat on and off ramp, like what mechanisms can you use? It was a lot easier 2 years ago, and then the U.S. government declared war on crypto, and so what they've been doing is clipping a lot of this stuff. But internationally speaking, there's a lot of fiat on and off that exists, and it's there. Typically, though, there are relatively high fees for accessing these things. They're usually beyond 50 basis points, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. And then, of course, there's always the ATM networks as well. There's plenty of people that still deploy crypto ATMs and do interesting things with that.
So short follow-up. So the other thing I think about is that for those who haven't taken the other pill yet and jumped over into crypto and are sitting over in TradFi and thinking that centralized governance is their safety, it's their life raft. Ultimately, bringing them over here, I think, if you have something that is familiar, say like fiat with USD currently, the euro, obviously, and things of that nature going forward, it might bring a few people over a little quicker than ultimately if we just stick with saying, yeah, just come on over. It's an algo. Don't worry. It's fine. And they're not even going to understand how the whole thing works. And therefore, they probably won't get involved and or interact with the protocol.
Well, that's why people build on top of it. And I look at one view, in the basement as the protocol developer, and then the dApp layer looks at it from a different view. And then, this is how people compete, and they differentiate their dApps and their experiences and their infrastructure from other people is by that ease of use and how that onboarding journey looks like. So, I agree with you from that dimension. It's just I don't think the end goal ought to be fiat on and off ramp. The end goal ought to be building user experiences and interesting applications that are so viral and interesting that it organically brings lots of people in, and that people are desperate to find fiat on and off ramp because they want to get that experience. So a great example of our lived experience was CryptoKitties in the Ethereum ecosystem. And that brought an enormous amount of people into Ethereum. And people built all this infrastructure in order to be able to use CryptoKitties. So we need that stuff in the Cardano world. And then that'll create a large amount of demand. And then the on and off ramps come and all these other things come because people are chasing that large group of people that have entered the ecosystem. So we have to be thinking along those lines, I think. And that solves a lot of the problem. Otherwise, you build these amazing roads, but there's no city around the road, so nobody drives on them. So it's kind of like the early days of Dubai, where they built all these beautiful highway systems, but there were no skyscrapers yet. So, it's like 6-lane road that's empty. It doesn't really do much for you, So you have to create some demand before you start seeing those things come easily. Otherwise, you pay out the ass for that infrastructure, and you don't really get a lot of ROI out of it.
Right. Well, thanks, Charles. Appreciate your time, and thanks, Hosky. We'll see you later.
All right, we have Johnny, Bikram, and then Oysterpool.
Thank you. Hello, Charles. It's me, Uncle Johnny. I have a couple of questions for you, my dear nephew. When are you planning on returning to the old country and build something here? Over in Norway. And also, are you still going to come on Porky Island Space 21st of December? Or do you want to do it before? Much love, Uncle Johnny.
Whereabouts in Norway are you guys?
Telemark, the best part.
I prefer Tromsø, but
Come down south. We got forest. I know about
yes,
the energy field in the forest. It's 5,000 year old. It just arrived in Norway. I can tell you, since we family.
yeah. I have a lot of family out in Stavanger, and there's a Steen family, and they also some of them are in Oslo now. But for those of you who may know my ancestry, I'm a quarter Norwegian, and the Norwegian side of the family actually left Norway about 100 years ago, and they went to Montana and settled down there. Although some of them stayed behind and fought the Nazis and just still raise sheep. So that's the thing to do in Norway is kill Nazis and raise sheep. It's
Yeah,
kind of
that
a
was
Norwegian
me.
tradition.
That was me, but now we need you guys back. You had a nice vacation. Time to
Yeah.
return, old buddy.
I was just in Iceland. I'll work my way out to Norway. I love Norway. It's a beautiful country. Lefse is like the best dessert ever.
I agree. Porky Island is the best space. I need you to come on Porky Island space one time,
It's on
Charles.
December 21st.
Yes, please. 7
All right.
p.m. UTC.
Find JJ and send it his way.
Let's go.
All right, we got Bikram, Oyster, and then Michael.
Hello, Charles. So can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello. Yeah. So my question is different from others. I have a few questions. So I'm from India, and I have a question. The recent data hacks in India, poses a serious threat in India. So how can the blockchain technology, especially like Cardano, play a role in enhancing data security for the individuals and the organizations in my regions? So I just want to know what's your opinion about this and how can the innovative blockchain solutions contributing to this minimizing the data solutions, data vulnerabilities, particularly the countries and the environment like India's. If you have any opinion about this.
Sure. So data security is a really important thing, and I mean there's $50 billion worth of breaches every year. So It's not a small topic, and it's something every Fortune 500 company and government has to deal with. I remember as an American citizen, one of the greatest breaches of national security in our country's history was with the OFAC hack. Not OFAC, but the OPM, the Office of Personnel Management hack. This happened about 10 years ago, and what happened is if you apply for a security clearance in the United States, you have to file a form called SF-86. And the form is very comprehensive. It asks very invasive questions, and then it triggers, depending on the clearance level that you apply for, a investigation by the FBI called an SSBI. Now, all those notes and all the content of that form go into your profile at the Office of Personnel Management. Well, those profiles of the granted and ungranted clearances, over 10 million of them got hacked and turned over and now are in the hands of the Chinese government. So the problem is that if you get rejected for clearance, you get rejected for a reason. So maybe you have an alcohol problem, maybe you have a gambling problem, maybe you had an affair or something. So imagine that you tell the government all that stuff, they hold on to it, and then they lose it, and now China knows it and can use it against you. It's just an extraordinary thing. And over 10 million people got impacted. And we just say, oh, well, we just have to move on. It's a terrible tragedy. But this is the nature of collecting very invasive information about people in large government databases. It never works the way you think it's going to work, and it's really traumatic. So what you need to do instead is you need to have element level encryption. You need to have databases where they're not all stored in one place, but they're actually a collection of shards, and they have to be reconstructed through a schema. You have to have much stronger access control policy, and also where and when you're querying this information, you want to query it in a way where you get the facts you're looking for, but you don't unblind the personally identifiable information. So this is a problem we run into all the time with healthcare data, national security, supply chain information, especially on the ESG side. And I think blockchain has a huge role to play in it. Namely, it's a really great trusted bulletin board for self-sovereign identities, which is the fundamental component of access control, and it's a much better way of handling the access control component. It's an all-you-can-eat buffet of good cryptography for multi-party computation and other things that you'd need to use to shard your data and keep it much more secure. And also, it gives you a lot of new cryptographic primitives that allow you to extract meaning and information from raw data without necessarily decrypting it. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing, though, and it's always contextual to your use case. So, for example, how you would store clearanced information or personnel information would be radically different than how you would store supply chain information, for example. But the same primitives, like the use of a DID, the use of MPC, the use of element level encryption, all of this stuff can apply the same way. And therein lies, I think, a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity for entrepreneurs in the space is to invent turnkey ways of doing this in a rather straightforward way, like DSLs for access control languages, for example. Adding a lot of sophisticated cryptography to DIDs, for example, is another thing that can be done. And then also just advancements and ways of extracting information from encrypted data. We did this with Midnight and Kachina, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in the partial and fully homomorphic world to be able to do full data extractions and meaningful mining in reasonable time for this stuff. But it's a big passion of ours. It's one of the reasons we created Midnight, and we think it's going to bring trillions of dollars of value into the cryptocurrency ecosystem if we solve this, because it's such a big problem. And if nation states can't keep the personal lives of their spies secret, that's a big issue for everybody. And the United States supposedly is like the best at this. So if they can't do it, then how can a small company do it? And that's just an untenable situation.
In India, so the situation is very threatening because the last recent Indian government's search agencies hack happened and our IDs are selling in the dark web like 800 millions. 800 million people's ID are selling in the dark web. So I just want to some suggestions if you want to do some similar type of approach, educations in Africa you are doing the education in Africa, like a
Yeah, and
similar
it's going to
type
be
of
a big.
approach.
It's going to be a big part of Midnight, and I'd highly encourage you to take a look at the Midnight.network and take a look at the Midnight testnet, and the DevNet, so that you can kind of see the direction that they're going. Anyway, thank you so much for your question. I got time for about one more, and then I think my voice is going to go out.
All right, next lucky one is Oyster. You're next in line.
How's it going? You all right? Hi, Charles. I actually I'm on the road right now, and I didn't actually realise that I'd pressed request to speak. Sorry, but while I'm up here, I'll just keep it brief and say it's great being part of the ecosystem. Looking forward to seeing what's coming, and yeah, just to let you know, I recently organised the first Cardano meetup in Wales, which happened in September. You might find that interesting. That went really well. Yeah. So yeah, there's a nice Welsh community forming here. You'd be pleased to know. So yeah, anyway, I'll leave you to it because I didn't mean to press request to speak. So I'll have a
All right,
question for you next time.
I'll take one more question then.
Alrighty, Micah, you were next.
All right, what's up? Nice to meet you, Charles. I'm Micah. I'm very anxious asking this, but I wanted to talk more about what Joshi was talking about the education, and I think that's something that I also have I find very valuable as someone who came to Cardano, found Cardano to be initially very hard to build on, and now finds it easier to build on. I think I would like to hear what you think about how we're actually going to make that easier, or how much sorry, I'm screwing up. I'm very anxious talking to you.
That's okay. So there's a lot of efforts underway to make it easier. I mean, Aiken is a good example, and TX Pipe are good examples. There's all this community built infrastructure that has a different philosophy on how to construct things, and we're working real hard as an ecosystem right now to try to get those things where they need to be. The people forget something. It's a very fundamental truth. You got to understand that I'm surrounded by a lot of people that write programming languages for a living and have been doing this for a really, really long time. So what I did is, because I'm so fortunate to be surrounded by these people, is the first thing I did is I asked them, how long does it take for a programming language that's new to reach a level of maturity where your DevX gets pretty good? So I called up Martin Ardursky. He created Scala, and we talked to him. We obviously Phil Wadler created Haskell back in 1985, and he was also around to talk to the Go guys and the Java guys, and we talked to the Dart guys. We talked to a lot of different language designers, and they said on average it takes about 3 to 7 years. So I remember when we first started working on Cardano, it was 2015. Rust had just been released. And a lot of people came to me and said, "Hey, Rust is a really cool programming language." We looked at it, and we said, "Oh, no, it's just too rough around the edges." Now you look at Rust in 2023, it's a beautiful ecosystem, tons of great tooling, and it's a radically different language than when we looked at it in 2015. So it takes time for things to mature. And if you look at Plutus, we're about 2 years in. Came out 2021 and very late. We've had all of 2022 and some of 2023. And what we've done is we built up a lot of phenomenal tooling. And we're now in version 2, soon to be version 3. And we're starting to see that DevX change from, wow, this is really hard, to this is getting easier. And we're starting to see community-built tooling to facilitate different models of development. Like Aiken brings in a Rust-style model. And then obviously Plutus is evolving, and we're trying to bring in a lot of the goodness from the Haskell ecosystem. And then yet still people have different philosophies. We're starting to see people want to bring Python and compile it down to Plutus Core, or TypeScript and compile it down to Plutus Core, and bring those different development philosophies in. And so that, combined with better documentation, stronger libraries, and these things, you end up getting a really good DevX over time. And that's something that just happens as you get more dApps, as you get more builders, and you get more coordination amongst those people. There's no substitute for it. Microsoft tried. Google tried with Go and Dart. You'll notice that Dart is only now getting good, and Google is gigantic company. Apple tried with Swift. Look at how many people are still running Objective-C. It took a real long time to get there. Facebook tried really hard with Hack, which was their PHP replacement, and that never really gained the traction that they would have hoped that it would have gained. Even still, Microsoft fights the .NET wars versus Java. If you're a C# developer versus Java, and there's a mature ecosystem there. So there's no substitute for time, and there's no substitute for the effort that has to be put in to get it done. And you just have to have the right evolution and the right dev cycle for it. And you have to have a viewpoint of, let's every year be a little bit better. Every year let's be a little bit faster, and every year be a little bit more inclusive. And then eventually we'll get where we need to go. And I think we've achieved mountains of progress. If you're a developer starting in Cardano today compared to September of 2021, it is a radically, radically, radically different world than it was back then. And in 2 or 3 years, it'll be a radically different world than it is today. So that's progress, and that's what you have to do, and that's what the Rust community did. That's what the .NET community did. That's what the TypeScript community did. That's what the Dart community did, and that's how you build a great language. And you can always get where you need to go. And if people disagree, that's why you have other languages. Like I will never again write another line of Java code. We write Scala code and Kotlin code, and we write Clojure code. By the way, it compiles to the JVM. Well, that's also how Plutus works. You have Plutus core and a surface language, and there's a lot of people floating around saying, I'm never going to write another line of Plutus code. I'm going to write Aiken code. Well, it compiles to Plutus. Yeah, and that's okay. And Aiken is actually evolving very rapidly, and there's even competition amongst the IO teams with Aiken, by the way. The Hydra team implemented a few things in Aiken, and they're like, oh yeah, we kind of like this. It's just pretty cool. So that's fine. And what's happened is the Plutus team is receptive to that, and they say, we got to be like the Java guys and just put a lot of work into our virtual machine, put a lot of work into our core, because maybe as a compile target, that's a better roadmap than trying to win the language wars. And let surface languages evolve. And then what happens with Intersect, once you have these dev committees, is that they can talk and say, hey, we've noticed that everybody wants to use Aiken over this, or XYZ over this. And say, all right, well, let's put more funding into that, hire more engineers to go and do that, and pivot the roadmap accordingly. That's the point of listening to your community. They kind of tell you, like, we bet on the application backend. No one used it. Nobody wanted to go down that road. Okay, so that was a wrong bet. And that's okay. You can admit these types of things, and as long as you have the ability to pivot, change, and grow. And I'm very happy with the momentum that there's there. Certainly more resources need to be put into it. But do remember that there's a lot going on, and actually overall the progress is pretty good. I mean, there was a 10x improvement from Plutus 1 to 2, and Plutus 3 is bringing a lot of improvements. And as a compile target, I think Plutus is becoming a really cool thing.
I agree. I'm definitely happy with how it has improved, because I can do things 10 times faster, as you say. I also just want to mention, about 3 hours ago, I was writing some explanations for writing, doing some tricks with Icon, and I just wanted to kind of bring that up while education was on the topic. I think it's useful to get that material out there. So, yeah.
Yeah, so be an advocate for it. Join Intersect. It's good to see my good friend Kim.com here. Kim, long time, my friend. And I wish I could stay in chat, but my voice is just about to go out. So thank you all for a lovely, lovely time. It was a lot of fun. I always love these spaces, and it's so cool that on a Saturday I can just click a button and then suddenly I'm connected to my community. And there's so many thousands of people that had a chance to join and interact, and I'm glad for all the questions that you gave me. And I hope I feel a little bit better, because I want to do this more often. Cheers.
Cheers.